I remember the exact moment the keypad code changed because it was the same morning I burned the eggs. It sounds stupid now, like some tiny domestic detail that shouldn't matter, but it's burned into my brain. The smoke alarm chirped once, the dog started whining, and my husband Jake was standing by the back door, holding his coffee like he'd already mentally left the house. "Code's different now," he said casually. I looked over from the stove. "What?" "For the garage," he said. "Keypad. I had to change it." I remember the way he shrugged when he said it, like it wasn't worth explaining, like it was something small and boring, the way you'd mention you moved the trash cans. I turned off the burner and slid the pan onto a cold spot on the stove. "Why?" He took a sip of coffee and leaned his shoulder against the doorframe. "Contractors coming and going. Figured it safer." "Okay," I said slowly. "So what's the new code?" He hesitated. It wasn't a long hesitation, maybe 2 seconds, but when you've been married to someone for 9 years, you notice the tiny pauses. "I'll give it to you later," he said. "I gotta run." Then he grabbed his keys and left. The back door closed and the house went quiet, except for the whining smoke alarm and our golden retriever scratching at the tile. I stood there, staring at the door like I'd just watched something slide out of place. The garage remodel was supposed to be my idea, or at least that's what Jake told everyone. "Claire's finally getting her art studio," he'd say to friends. "About time she had her own space." He'd put his arm around my shoulders when he said it, smiling like some supportive husband from a home renovation show. And it was true that I painted. I'd been doing it since college. Nothing professional, nothing anyone would hang in a gallery, but it mattered to me. For years, my easel has lived in the corner of the dining room, shoved against the window where the light was decent. Jake had come home one night in January and said, "Why don't we convert the garage?" Just like that. He even showed me sketches on his phone. New flooring, insulated walls, big windows, track lighting. "You'd have real space," he said. "You deserve that." I remember hugging him so tight he laughed and told me to relax. So when construction started in March, I was excited. Dust everywhere, guys with tool belts, the constant hammering echoing through the house. It was messy, but it felt like progress. Jake handled everything. The contractor, the materials, the budget. Whenever I asked questions, he'd say, "Don't worry about it, I got it." At first, it felt nice not having to manage anything. Then little things started feeling strange. The garage door stayed locked more often than it used to. Jake installed that keypad on the outside wall without really mentioning it. And then there were the late nights. "I'm checking on the remodel," he'd say, grabbing a flashlight and disappearing through the mudroom. Sometimes he'd be out there for 40 minutes. Once I walked out with him, thinking I'd see how things were going, and he said, "Careful, there's exposed wiring. Better stay inside." He kissed my forehead and shut the door behind him. At the time, I didn't question it. Jake worked in commercial real estate development. Construction projects were basically his second language. If he said something was unsafe, I believed him. But the keypad thing stuck in my head. After he left that morning, I cleaned up breakfast, fed the dog, and tried to paint for a while. I couldn't focus. The new studio was technically almost finished. I'd seen glimpses through the door when workers came in and out. Fresh drywall, polished concrete floors. But I hadn't actually been allowed inside yet. Jake kept saying he wanted it to be a surprise. That had sounded sweet before. Now it felt weird. Around noon, I walked out to the driveway and looked at the keypad mounted beside the garage door. It was one of those sleek black panels with glowing numbers, brand new. I punched in the old code, 0421. The light flashed red. I tried again, red. "Okay," I muttered to myself. I stood there for a second, thinking about how ridiculous it was that I couldn't get into my own garage. The sun was warm on the pavement, and somewhere down the street a lawnmower buzzed. Totally normal suburban afternoon. Except I was locked out of part of my own house. I tried Jake's birthday. Red. Our anniversary. Red. The dog's name spelled in numbers. Nothing. I felt this weird flutter in my chest that I didn't want to name, so I went back inside. Jake got home around 6 that evening. He smelled like sawdust and cologne, the way he always did after a day at the office. "How's the studio coming?" I asked as casually as I could. He loosened his tie and dropped his briefcase on the counter. "Good, almost done." "Can I see it yet?" He smiled, but it looked slightly forced. "Soon." I leaned against the kitchen island. "What's the new keypad code?" He opened the fridge and stared inside like he was deciding something important. "Still figuring out a permanent one," he said. "Temporary lock for now." I blinked. "That doesn't make sense." He shut the fridge. "It's just a security thing, Claire. Relax." There was that tone. Not angry exactly, just dismissive. Like I was making a big deal out of nothing. I let it go, at least outwardly. But that night, lying in bed beside him while he scrolled through emails on his phone, I felt this quiet knot forming in my stomach. Jake had never hidden things from me before. He was the guy who left his laptop open, his phone face up, passwords written on sticky notes. Transparency had always been our normal. So why did a keypad code suddenly feel like a locked door between us? Over the next few days, things got stranger. The contractor stopped coming, no trucks in the driveway, no hammering. But Jake kept going into the garage every night. Sometimes he'd be out there for an hour. Once I cracked the back door open just enough to listen. I expected silence or maybe music. Instead, I heard voices. Low, muffled conversation. My chest tightened instantly. I pushed the door open another inch. Jake's voice was definitely one of them. The other voice, I couldn't make out clearly. But it didn't sound like a contractor. It sounded lighter, softer. My heart started pounding so loud I thought they might hear it through the door. Then suddenly, the garage door inside rattled like someone had bumped it. I panicked and shut the door quietly, backing away like a kid caught snooping. 5 minutes later, Jake walked into the kitchen, alone. "Hey," he said. I forced a smile. "Hey, everything okay?" "Yeah." He grabbed a bottle of water and twisted the cap. "You were outside?" he asked. He nodded slowly, studying my face for a second longer than usual. Then he smiled. "The studio is going to blow your mind when it's finished." That night, I barely slept. My brain kept replaying the sound of that second voice. Maybe it was a contractor I hadn't seen. Maybe someone picking up equipment. Maybe I was imagining things. But 3 days later, something happened that made it impossible to pretend anymore. I came home early from the grocery store, and as I pulled into the driveway, the garage door was halfway open, just enough for me to see inside. I froze in the driver's seat. Because the space that was supposed to be my art studio didn't look anything like an art studio. There was a couch, a small bar cart, a rug, soft lighting, and a woman standing near the workbench, laughing at something Jake had just said. She had long, dark hair and was holding a glass of wine, like she belonged there. Then Jake turned his head and saw my car. The garage door slammed shut so fast it echoed down the street. And in that moment, sitting there gripping the steering wheel, I realized something about my husband that made my entire body go cold. The garage remodel was never for me. For a few seconds after the garage door slammed shut, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel like my hands had forgotten how to move. The engine was still running. The grocery bags in the passenger seat had shifted when I braked, and a carton of strawberries rolled onto the floor mat. My heart was pounding so hard it made my vision feel slightly blurry. I kept replaying the image I'd just seen. The couch, the rug, the soft lighting, the wine glass, and the woman. She'd been standing close to Jake, close enough that it didn't look like two people discussing drywall or paint colors. It looked like two people hanging out somewhere comfortable, somewhere private. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A designer, maybe. Someone helping him decorate the space before revealing it to me. A friend from work. Someone I'd forgotten he mentioned. Except none of that explained the wine, or the way the garage door had slammed shut the second he saw me. I turned off the engine. The quiet inside the car felt thick. For a second, I considered backing out of the driveway and leaving, driving around the block, pretending I'd never come home early. But that felt insane. This was my house, my garage, supposedly my studio. So I grabbed the grocery bags and got out of the car. The garage door stayed closed. The keypad stared back at me, the numbers faintly glowing in the late afternoon light. I walked past it slowly, up the driveway, through the front door. The house smelled the same as always, lemon cleaner and the faint vanilla candle I'd left burning that morning. Everything looked normal, except my heart was racing like I'd just caught someone breaking in. I set the groceries on the kitchen counter and tried to breathe normally. Maybe Jake would come inside casually. Maybe the woman would leave through the side door before I saw her. Maybe I was about to feel really stupid. 5 minutes passed. Nothing. 10 minutes. Still nothing. Then I heard the door from the mudroom open. Jake walked in alone. He looked slightly flushed. Not panicked. Not guilty exactly. Just alert. "Hey," he said. The word landed in the kitchen like it always did. Casual. Familiar. But something about it felt off now. "Hey," I replied. I watched his eyes flick briefly to the grocery bags. "You're home early." Store wasn't busy. He nodded and grabbed an apple from the counter like this was the most ordinary moment in the world. But I could see a thin line of tension in his shoulders. "Who was in the garage?" I asked. The question came out calm, almost too calm. Jake took a bite of the apple and chewed slowly. "What do you mean?" I felt something sharp twist in my chest. "I mean the woman standing in there drinking wine with you." He stopped chewing, just for a second. Then he swallowed and shrugged. "Oh, that. That, like I'd asked about a package delivery. Yeah, he said. Interior designer. I blinked. For the garage? Yeah, I told you I wanted it to look good. My stomach tightened. With a couch and a bar cart? He smirked slightly. Relax, I thought you'd want a comfortable studio. Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. What's her name? I asked. He hesitated. Again, just a second too long. Lauren. The name landed in my head like a loose puzzle piece. Lauren what? He took another bite of the apple. Do you need her resume? That dismissive tone again. I crossed my arms. Why was the garage door slammed shut when you saw my car? Jake rolled his eyes. Claire, seriously? Yes, seriously. He tossed the apple core in the trash. You're making this weird. I felt heat rising in my face. I saw you in there with another woman in a room you won't let me enter. I think that qualifies as weird. He exhaled slowly like I was exhausting him. She's helping finish the design. I wanted it to be a surprise. With wine? It's 5 o'clock, he said flatly. I stared at him. Something in my gut refused to settle. Jake had always been smooth with words, calm, logical. But right now it felt like he was talking around something. Then let me see it, I said. What? The studio. If it's almost done, let me see it. His jaw tightened. Not yet. Why? Because it's not ready. I felt a wave of anger rising now. I just saw it. You saw part of it. And that part had furniture and a bar. It's a lounge corner. For painting? He didn't answer. The silence stretched. Finally, he sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. Look, I wanted the reveal to be special. Can you just trust me? That word, trust. It felt almost ironic. I studied his face for a long moment. 9 years of marriage had taught me all his little tells. The way his eyes shifted when he was uncomfortable, the way he over-explained when he was covering something. Right now, he was doing both. Okay, I said finally. The tension in his shoulders loosened slightly. But inside my chest, something had already started cracking. That night, he acted extra normal. Almost too normal. He cooked dinner, opened a bottle of red wine, told me about some deal happening at his office. The whole time, I watched him like I was seeing a slightly different version of my husband. Like there was a layer I'd never noticed before. When we went to bed, he fell asleep fast. Jake always slept like someone who'd already solved all his problems. I lay there staring at the ceiling. Around midnight, I heard something. A faint click. I turned my head. Jake's side of the bed was empty. My stomach dropped instantly. I slid out of bed and padded down the hallway as quietly as I could. The house was dark, but a thin strip of light was visible under the mudroom door, the door that led to the garage. My heart started pounding. I moved closer, and then I heard it. Laughter. A woman's voice. Soft. Familiar. Lauren. My entire body went cold. I stood there in the dark hallway listening to the sound of my husband laughing with another woman in a room he'd locked me out of. At midnight, inside my own house. Something snapped inside me right then. Not explosive anger. Something colder, quieter. I walked back to the bedroom, grabbed my phone, and sat on the edge of the bed staring at the screen. If Jake thought I was just going to keep accepting vague answers, he didn't know me nearly as well as he thought. Because suddenly I realized something. I didn't actually know anything about Lauren. And tomorrow morning, the first thing I was going to do was find out exactly who she was. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the house felt amplified. The hum of the refrigerator downstairs, the occasional creak in the hallway, the distant rumble of a car passing on our street. But the sound that kept replaying in my head was the laughter I'd heard through the mudroom door. Jake's voice, and hers. I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering how long they had been out there, wondering what exactly was happening in that space that was supposed to be my art studio. At some point, Jake came back to bed. I felt the mattress dip, felt the warmth of his body settle beside me. He didn't touch me, just rolled onto his side and went to sleep like nothing unusual had happened. I lay there staring at the dark outline of his shoulders. For the first time in 9 years of marriage, I felt like I was lying next to someone I didn't fully know. When my alarm went off at 6:30, I was already awake. Jake groaned and rolled over, pulling the blanket over his head. "Morning already?" he muttered. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded steady, calm. Inside, my mind was moving fast. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen island with my laptop. The house was quiet except for the dog padding across the hardwood floor. I opened Google. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a second. Then I typed Lauren, interior designer. Too vague. I added our town name. A list popped up instantly. Dozens of designers, websites, Instagram pages, LinkedIn profiles. I clicked through them one by one. None of the women in the photos looked like the person I'd seen in the garage. My stomach tightened. Jake had said her name without a last name, like he expected me not to look further. So I tried something else. Jake's company website. He worked for a mid-sized commercial real estate firm downtown. They had staff directories, project pages, all the usual corporate stuff. I scrolled through employees. Nothing. Then I checked LinkedIn. Jake's profile came up immediately. His smiling headshot, his job title, the list of people he worked with. Connections. Hundreds of them. I started scrolling. And that's when I saw her. Lauren Mitchell. Her profile picture made my chest tighten instantly. Long dark hair, the same face I'd seen standing in my garage holding a wine glass. I clicked the profile. Marketing consultant, not interior designer. She worked for a branding agency in the city. My stomach dropped. I kept reading. She and Jake had a bunch of mutual connections through his work. The most recent one, Jake himself, connected 3 months ago, right around the time the garage remodel had started. I sat back in my chair slowly. My heart felt like it was beating somewhere in my throat. 3 months. The remodel had started in early March. Jake had met Lauren in February. The timeline slid together in my head like puzzle pieces locking into place. My art studio idea, the sudden enthusiasm for converting the garage, the late nights checking on the remodel, the keypad installation, the secret code, and now the couch, the rug, the bar cart. It wasn't a studio. It was a private room, a hidden one. My hands felt cold on the keyboard. Upstairs, I heard the shower turn on, Jake getting ready for work. I stared at Lauren's LinkedIn photo. She looked confident, polished, early 30s maybe, pretty in that effortless city professional way. I clicked her Instagram next, public profile. My stomach tightened again. Her recent photos were normal enough, brunch with friends, office selfies, city skyline shots, but as I scrolled further down, something caught my eye. A photo from 2 weeks ago, a glass of red wine sitting on a sleek black bar cart. The caption said, "Perfect little hideaway." My chest went tight. The background of the photo was blurred slightly, but I recognized the concrete floor. I recognized the edge of the workbench. That photo had been taken in my garage. I sat there staring at it for a long time. My pulse was slow now, not panicked, just heavy. Upstairs, the shower shut off. I quickly closed the laptop. By the time Jake came downstairs, I was making toast, like every other morning. He kissed the top of my head. Morning, morning. He poured himself coffee and checked his phone. Busy day, he said. I watched him over the rim of my mug. Lauren coming by today? I asked. His eyes flicked up immediately. Why? You said she's helping finish the studio. Maybe, he said, the hesitation again. I might stop by later. Something dark twisted quietly in my chest. You working late tonight? I asked. Probably. He grabbed his keys. Don't wait up. Then he left. The front door closed behind him. I waited 5 full minutes. Then I walked out to the garage keypad again. The numbers glowed softly in the morning sun. I didn't try guessing the code this time. Instead, I walked around the side of the house. There was a small window on the garage wall that used to be covered with cardboard during construction. Now the cardboard was gone, but the blinds were closed. Of course they were. I stood there staring at the window for a minute. Then I pulled out my phone. If Jake had built a private hideaway in our garage for another woman, I wasn't going to sit around politely waiting for explanations. I opened the camera and started recording. The day passed slowly. Around 4 in the afternoon, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. My heart started pounding. Lauren stepped out of the car. Same long dark hair, same confident stride. She walked straight to the keypad like she'd done it 100 times. Her fingers tapped the code quickly. The garage door opened. She went inside, and it stayed open just long enough for me to see something that made my stomach twist even harder. Because the room wasn't just a lounge, it was a full setup. Couch, mini fridge, soft lights, music playing quietly. And on the wall where my easel was supposed to go, there were framed photos of Jake and Lauren, together, laughing, at a restaurant, on a rooftop bar, looking like a couple. The garage door slid closed again. I stood there across the street behind my car, holding my phone with the video still recording. My hands were shaking now. Not with doubt, not with confusion, with certainty. Jake hadn't just been cheating. He'd built an entire secret life 10 feet away from our kitchen. And the craziest part? He thought I'd never find out. I didn't confront them right away. That's the part people always ask me about when I tell this story. They assume I kicked the door down or started screaming in the driveway, but that's not what happened. When I saw those photos on the wall, Jake and Lauren smiling like they were the ones who lived in my house, I felt something inside me go very still. Not numb, focused. I went back inside quietly like I had just finished running an errand. The house looked exactly the same as it had that morning. My coffee mug was still sitting on the counter. The dog was asleep on the living room rug. But now every square inch of the place felt different, because right on the other side of the mudroom door, my husband was sitting in a secret room with another woman, and they thought they were alone. I checked the time on my phone, 4:18 p.m. Jake usually got home around 6, which meant he had probably told her to come early, or maybe he had never left the house at all and had just slipped out of the garage that morning before I woke up. That thought made my stomach turn. I sat down at the kitchen island and opened the video I had just recorded. Lauren walking up to the keypad, typing the code without hesitation, the garage opening, and that brief glimpse inside, the couch, the bar cart, the photos. I watched it twice. Then I started doing something Jake definitely didn't expect.
I started gathering things. First, my laptop.
Then the folder in the hallway cabinet where we kept copies of our financial documents, mortgage papers, tax returns, bank statements. I wasn't panicking. I was organizing. The longer I sat there, the clearer everything became. This hadn't been some spontaneous mistake. Jake had planned this. The remodel, the keypad, the furniture, the photos. That room wasn't a fling. It was a space he built for a relationship, right next to his wife. The quiet audacity of it made my chest feel tight. At 5:02 p.m., my phone buzzed. Jake. Running a little late. Don't wait for dinner. I stared at the message. He was texting me that while Lauren was currently sitting in our garage. I typed back, no problem. Then I stood up. My heart started beating faster as I walked toward the mudroom door. On the other side of it, I could hear faint music, soft laughter, Lauren's voice, Jake's voice. For a second, I just stood there with my hand on the knob. 9 years of marriage sat on the other side of that door. Vacations, holidays, the quiet routines of a shared life. And also, apparently, a hidden room where my husband played house with someone else. I turned the knob. Unlocked. Of course it was unlocked. They thought I didn't have the code. The door swung open. The sound of music got louder immediately. They didn't notice me at first. The room looked even more surreal up close. Soft yellow lighting from wall sconces, a gray sectional couch, a small rug, the bar cart with 2 half-filled glasses of red wine. And those photos on the wall. Jake and Lauren in different places around the city, smiling like they belonged to each other. Jake was sitting on the couch with his arm draped across the back cushion. Lauren was curled beside him, her legs tucked under her. They looked comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times. Lauren was the first one to notice me. Her eyes lifted toward the doorway. The color drained from her face instantly. Jake followed her gaze. When he saw me standing there, the expression on his face was something I will never forget. Pure shock. Like the last thing he ever expected was for me to walk into that room. Claire, he said. Just my name, nothing else. For a few seconds, nobody moved. I stepped inside slowly. My footsteps were loud against the concrete floor. So this is the studio, I said. My voice sounded calm. Too calm. Jake stood up quickly. Claire, I raised a hand. Don't. He stopped. Lauren was staring at me like she wasn't sure if she should run. I looked around the room again. You did a great job, I said. Very cozy. Jake ran a hand through his hair. This isn't what it looks like. I actually laughed. Not loudly, just once. You built a living room in our garage and hung photos of you and your girlfriend on the wall. I looked at Lauren. Did I miss anything? Her face went red. Jake stepped toward me. Claire, please, let me explain. Go ahead. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because there was no explanation. Not one that made sense. Not one that made this anything other than exactly what it was. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and held it up. I recorded Lauren coming in earlier, I said, using the keypad code. Jake's eyes flicked to the screen. I could see the moment reality started sinking in for him. This has been going on for months, I said. Silence. Lauren stood up slowly. I didn't know, she started. I looked at her. You didn't know he was married? Her mouth closed. Jake said nothing. That answered that. I felt something settle inside my chest right then. Not rage, not sadness. Finality. I turned back toward Jake. You can keep the garage. His head snapped up. What? The couch, the wine, the hideaway. I gestured around the room. All yours. Claire, I already called a lawyer. That wasn't entirely true yet, but it would be by tomorrow morning. His face went pale. You're serious? I looked at him for a long moment. 9 years together. And somehow he thought the thing that would break us was getting caught. Not the building. Not the lies. Not the secret life 10 feet away from where we ate breakfast every morning. Yes, I said quietly. Then I walked out of the garage. Behind me, neither of them followed. I went back inside the house, grabbed the bag I had already packed, and walked out the front door. As I drove away, I passed the garage one last time. The keypad light was glowing in the early evening, still set to a code I didn't know, but it didn't matter anymore, because that room had never really been mine. And now, neither was the man who built it.